sent this to me. The list of coaches who are younger than Scott Drew and have more wins. There's one, Mick Cronin. 9 months younger, 17 more wins out of everybody. And Scott Drew is, for most of the case, a young coach. Doesn't mean there's not a lot of younger coaches in college basketball, 350 whatever, Division I programs is going to be. But only UCLA's Mick Cronin, who almost played against Scott Drew at UCLA in that Final Four in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
That dramatic loss to Gonzaga.
It makes you wonder if he had just taken over Baylor and they had a normal situation, what his wins and losses would be, because, you have to, he's blown well past the point where it's even discussing what he stepped into now. But, I mean, as far as when it comes to total wins and losses, the first 2 years of his coaching tenure, I mean, you kind of have to just throw out the window because of just the human beings total that he had on the roster. And the guys, the walk-on tryouts on campus are usually, for the most part, preferred walk-ons, and then maybe a couple guys you might kind of find diamonds in the rough that do show up because they're posted and they see, here's how I walk onto the basketball team. But it was actual, please come here and walk onto the team. We need people to help us play in games.
Yep.
It was like that. So, yeah, you add, even just an average mediocre first couple of seasons in there for him, and he's probably got 20 more wins.
Yeah, I mean that's impressive, and I don't want to take away from it at all, because it is impressive. There's a lot of other coaches who are not that high on the list, but he's also been coaching for 2 decades now too.
Yeah.
That's the thing. He stepped in as 33-year-old head coach at a situation where nobody else really wanted to be, and so that's how it started. And yeah, you're right. He had at least a couple of years at the very beginning where that didn't add very much to the totals that we're now talking about. So not to take away at all from what he's done. It's one of the most incredible rebuilding, reorganizing, restructuring, whatever you want to call it, situations in college athletics history. I mean, it's Hall of Famer stuff, but he has been at it a while. I mean, you look at the list, he as of last year, and I don't know about this year, but as of last year, because this is the most recent I could find, one of the top 10 longest tenured coaches in all of college basketball.
Yeah, that puts everything in perspective.
Yeah, he's there with Bill Self. We just saw Mike Bray at Notre Dame? He was on that list.
And he's kind of flopping now on whether or not, last I saw, he might not retire.
Yeah, so, I mean, he's ahead of Scott, but, we don't know how that might end. But, Boeheim's number one. He's been at it, obviously, for a really long time. Izzo, Mark Few, and there's others. But yeah, Scott Drew's top 10 as far as longest tenured college basketball coaches. So that does play into it, but that's, again, not to take away from the exceptional job that he did, and quite frankly, not everybody could have done. Not everybody would have had the patience or the ability to just hang in there, whether it was early on or even at times when, not that long ago, quite frankly, there are people writing articles about how he should be fired, despite the fact that they were
one person.
Still pretty, yeah, I know, but still pretty good. And there was, and not just from one person, maybe an article, but in general, there was that whole Scott Drew can't coach motto.
The Georgia State game, right? Is that the one? Yeah.
I feel like that was around before that, though, too.
Yeah.
Like, that was just around.
Oh, the Scott Drew can't coach. Yeah,
like that was a well-known, well-talked-about thing, I feel like. So, he's completely erased all of that, and it's mightily impressive no matter how you slice it.
All right, so I brought up this Kansas thing, that here's one, if not the bluest of all the blue bloods, and North Carolina and Kentucky and all of them are in the argument. But so they just won a national title, and it blew my mind. And they've been in like 6 other national title games, but the last national title before last year was 2008. What happened in 2008?
The Memphis couldn't shoot free throws.
Yeah, Jalen Rose team, right? They could not shoot free throws with Calipari.
Not Derrick Rose.
Derrick Rose,
and then
14 years.
Yeah, they couldn't shoot free throws, and Mario Chalmers was draining threes.
Yeah, hit the big one.
Like it was the only thing he knew how to do in life.
So this is Kansas. 14 years since their last one. Now, again, if you get one, man, it kind of just sets you up. And there's some that are like the Cinderella type of deals. Baylor wasn't. They buzzsawed everybody. The one before 2008 was Danny Manning in 1988 with a basically He-Man, almost Carmelo Anthony, let me load you up and take you to a national title, and beat a fantastic Oklahoma team in 88, 20 years prior to that. Before then was in the 50s with Wilt, and they have a couple back in the 20s. So it made me put this in perspective. Steve sent this text to me. Looking forward to the segment today with Scott Drew. I know any thinking Baylor fan is eternally grateful for what he has done. Still, last year is a perfect example. 27-7, Big 12 title, 4th in the final AP poll despite injuries sidelining John and Cryer. Yet many just remember the second overtime exit to the also eventual national championship finalist and say, decent year. The expectations were huge, of course. It's now Final Four or bust. Does he want to deal with this for the next 20 years?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
That's what you coach for.
Yeah.
I mean, if he wanted to not have expectations to make the tournament every year, then there's plenty of other schools he could go to. But that's not why folks get into the game. They embrace the pressure. Scott Drew would rather go to the Final Four every year and lose any day over not making the tournament on a regular basis or just making it once in a blue moon, right? I mean,
sure.
You want to go as deep as you can, and it's going to result in heartbreak on occasion and maybe more often than not. But you still want to take this thing as far as it can go, and sometimes it's just not going to go as far as you would like. That's just the breaks. That's part of the deal. Coach K only won so many national titles. Roy Williams only won so many. I mean, name any legendary coach. And I know there's tons and tons.
Wooden is the one at the top.
Wooden's at the top. There's only so many coaches out there with multiple national championships. It's a hard thing to do, and probably in basketball as hard as anywhere else. I know there can be an argument for football at this point of if you're not in a certain league, how much more difficult is it and all that. But yeah, I mean, absolutely, he'd rather have a few crushing losses, and expectations that follow with that are high stakes, high pressure than the alternative.
Well, and there's been, there's a lot of people who kind of, and you do that. You inflect kind of your expectations and your values on the situation.
Sure, Final Four bust too is a little bit extreme.
But with Scott Drew, everybody's always has been waiting for him to, since he's won at Baylor, jump and take another job. But if you look at what his upbringing was with Homer Drew, his father, Homer Drew had one job for a very long time. Scott's had one job for a very long time and intends that because Valpo was Homer's program. There was no doubt about it. It was Homer's program. And when you say, okay, well, I'm going to leave Baylor because I've done all I can and I've won a national championship and it's not a 100% basketball school. I want to go to a basketball school. Well, if you say he went to Kentucky, Billy Gillispie found this out in a hurry, right? Was that ever Billy Gillespie's program?
Nope.
He would have had to win 5 national championships for it to be Billy Gillespie's program. It has become John Calipari's program because his personality is so gigantic that he made it that way. But he's only won one title there. One. He's competed deep in, but it's been a long time for him too at Kentucky, which should be automatic based on their history, but it's not because it's hard. And Scott Drew is now on the verge of getting everything he's ever wanted as a basketball coach at the school that he built into a power, in that they're getting a new arena, right over here. And that, what does he have to worry about? Trying to get people out to the thing? Well, now there's a new arena and there's less people to fill it up. All of it's kind of coming up roses for him. So sometimes the grass is as green as it's ever going to be, and that's what it is for him here.
He's building it. He's built it into that where the expectations are with some of those others that just had a longer start time to becoming the elite in college basketball. All right, so yesterday, a couple of notes.